Well, hello and welcome. Well, today we are looking at a policy that is going to create more jobs, probably sustain more jobs. Since from January to date, over 12,600 of us have lost our jobs. Now, that is a frightening figure because if one person loses their job, they could probably be a breadwinner who's looking after a wife and 2, 3, 4 kids, and therefore all these people are then at the mercy of probably God, and hopefully manna would fall. But here comes a new policy. Ever since Ghana was established, we've now come up with a policy direction which is going to create jobs. But if we go all the way back to from 63 to 1970, in Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year plan, there was some sort of a direction as to where we create jobs. So there was like the Workers' Brigade, there were young pioneers, there were construction pioneers, and they all sort of mopped up the youth with energy and pointed them in that direction. Then came, lo and behold, Achampon, who also came with Operation Feed Yourself. So then maybe I would say it was a convention. It wasn't written on paper, but we all knew which areas where the jobs are, so we gravitated towards it, and indeed it worked. This new policy, which direction does it gravitate us to? You and I, what are we supposed to know and what are we supposed to do? And it looks at all sectors of the society. It looks after the disabled, those with HIV. Everybody is included. But what do we as a citizens and government, what parts do we play to make sure that everybody's doing it? And even if we've done all that, will DUMSO allow it to work? My name is Nana Sakwa, and this is PM Express. When I come back, I'm talking to His Eminent Austin Game. Don't move. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we are talking about something that's, I'd say, life and death. Well, close to life and death. We're talking about a policy that will bring employment to people of Ghana. And indeed, I mean, one of the things that gives a man his dignity is to be able to wake up in the morning and know that, listen, I've got a good 8-hour, even if it doesn't pay well, at least I went out and did something, so I hold my head up high. But today we have a policy so that at least we all know where we are going. And I am talking to former MP for North Tong and also a former Minister of Labour, so somebody who knows and understands employment and all its ins and outs. And I'm sure by the end of this show we shall all be educated. But post your comments or go to Facebook and look for Joy News. Just type in Joy News and post your comments there, and I'll read it as the show goes along. Kennedy Asari Bakun, your comments already there, and I'll read it later for you. Thanks for joining via Facebook. Mr. Game, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
It's been a while.
Yes.
So Game, let's walk us through the history. Even though I did it briefly, but we've never had a policy, but we had sort of a convention where we knew where we were going. Kwame Nkrumah had a 7-year plan, and in there, he had certain areas where, if you were educated or uneducated, you could gravitate towards this. Achampon came with Operation Feed Yourself, and did those things work?
Thank you, Nana, and good evening to our cherished viewers. The reality here is to enable us, first of all, put this thing in perspective. During the First Republic, Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah's era, the truth remains that our population, or if you like, the demographic structure of Ghana was manageable. We had 6 million people. We may not have too much, things around, but everything was reasonably new with us as Ghanaians. I was very young coming up. I was one of the young pioneers as well. The reality is that our water bodies were not polluted like today. Our forest cover, quite great. Everything was around us good. The kind of food we eat, the kind of diseases we are talking about today was not present. We had our own challenges at the time. And growing up and seeing my parents, as I can foresee them right now, things were just normal. And when Kwame Nkrumah eventually came up with these policies and We had in place properly the workers' brigade. A lot of work was being done around farm. Because our educational status as a nation, as a state, wasn't anything to write home about at the time. People were now, coming. I went to Sierra Leone to study, and I realized that a lot of people, including Nana Akufo-Addo's father and a lot more people, were all in Forabe College. I went to do a program there as well. So in effect, we didn't have the kind of challenges that we have today. So it was manageable. Today we are talking about a customer producing power, which was in excess. VACO couldn't even, take all. So clearly, the food habit we have, the demographic structure we have, the kind of diseases we have, and the challenges we have today were not present. So we could live with what we had at the time. And people who want to talk about this, if we can let go the politics of it and help our young people coming up today to understand that this was the situation at the time. So we don't hide behind the politics of Ghana and make it look as if nothing at all was done yesterday, today, and tomorrow to come. Having said so, there were no clear-cut, employment policies like we have gotten today. And this is coming out of the kind of law we have also. We have a very strong, Labor Act, which, gave birth to the tripartism by law in Ghana. We used to have tripartism, but we didn't have legislation backing it. Today, we have a very firm and strong legislation backing tripartism. And if you look at the role assigned to the National Tripartite Committee, everything in this Labor Act, they now fleshed it. Because in the Labor Act, the functions of the Tripartite Committee under it, under Section 113, it talks about, apart from determining the national daily minimum wage, they are to advise on employment and labor market issues, including labor laws, international labor standards, industrial relations, occupational safety and health, consult with partners in labor market on matters of socio-economic and importance, and to perform other functions. So in effect, we started attempting to flesh this thing around 1996. My Honorable Minister, Alhaji Mumuni, myself and Sister Amma Benyiwado, we did everything we could, but that couldn't go through. In 2006, I believe Nana Akomia and his team also attempted to do something. It didn't work. Today, honestly, we must congratulate Haruna Iddrisu, the Honorable Minister for Employment and Labor Relations, and also the organized labor and the Employers Association, plus all other people who contributed in diverse ways in arriving at this beautiful piece of work. It is highly ambitious, just as the ILO Director General alluded to today. So generally speaking, we have now a very strong framework. If we can put aside our traditional politics and the pettiness of it and hold this firmly, we can now talk about how do we make it happen in the face of the challenges you have already stated.
So then I'll take you back, not as far back as 63, but just to 72, 78, where I remember me even putting corn, and then I planted, I don't know what's called it even in English, but I think it's called cocoa. It's, it's like cocoyam, but you plant it like in very muddy, and so, I put a couple there, and then you have loads, and then you could fry it. We all followed it. What is there for me to contribute to this policy? How do we contribute? What is the direction now?
Now we have a framework. We are no longer going to be talking about status quo, doing things as usual, as and when it pleases somebody, whether it is in some political party's manifesto, whether it is a certain direction somebody feel we must follow, and so forth and so on. The Operation Feed Yourself stemmed out from pressures that was on all of us at the time. So we all put our hands on the wheel. We went into it. It did work at the time, and it satisfies our desires as a people. We still make reference to it, as you've done a moment ago. Now, do we really have any policy, any framework that all of us, the National Development Planning Commission, could build its strategic plans around To me, I would say no. So close we came was when former President Rawlings came up with Vision 2020, and because of the character and nature of our politics, it got thrown overboard because people were not supportive of it, you know. And they've been pulling excerpts out of it to deal with policies here and there. But now we have a coherent policy, you know, now that we can all now look onto, and I was so pleased to hear the Secretary General of the TUC said that they will wholeheartedly, you know, support it. And I saw many of my colleague labor operators who were all there today, and employers, everybody who matter was present. If all of us can put our hands on it and make it happen, then we can tomorrow, those who will leave the legacy for, will come and sit here and say that our predecessors did something, let's follow it up. So I think now we have a framework, we have a piece of document that all of us can relate to. The NDPC can use it to formulate its strategic policies around employment generation. Our educational system, in fact, that is the key. Our educational system now has something they can now fashion out the teaching methodology, the strategic plans they want to bring in the teaching methodology to help, you know, enable students to acquire skills even whilst in school. Maybe in, out type of approach, where people will be in school, even in the university, whether they are doing political science or they are doing ADR masters or they are doing whatever it is. All you need to do is to ensure that the people read, hear, lecture, and then move and got attached to industry. That is why the need to bring all the players on board is very critical. We need to have industry players to be present. We need to have everybody in the educational system, right from class 1 to the university, to understand what it is. So we can build up and model the whole thing around this particular program. So we do not derail it again.
I think you may be a prophet, because you know what I was going to talk about is education. I've opened it up, and that's you want to go to education, because see, as good as this policy is, I was going to say, has it been brought in the middle or a vacuum? Why I say that, see, because the people that we are hoping to employ now gives us, you know, very frightening statistics that, you know, out of the people who go into school, only 40% will gain admission into SHS, and you know those who pass out very little. So by the end of the line, you don't even have the substance. With all good intentions, you don't even have the people to work with. Should we have a whole new policy or revolution in education so that at least we can produce people who are employable?
Great. That's a very beautiful part of the whole thing. And this particular policy should not be taken for granted by the usual manner in which we do things in this country. We should all support it regardless of our political persuasions. The reality is this. If you look at the statistics that is being provided by my friend Dr. Bam Bashir today, clearly you will see that those who are even uneducated have a part. I am a supporter of education up to you can go to the moon and school there. I'll be very supportive of it. I don't want my children to go through what some of us might have gone through. So I support education, right from kindergarten to the moon. But the reality is that statistics is proving that those who completed secondary school and do not even possess skills were hoping against hope that they will get some decent kind of job, like working in Joy newsroom or working, even if they don't possess the skills. Somebody will have to take the burden of training them. Now, those who are down there, maybe quoting the president's dead goat syndrome, they don't fear any knife again. And they are in the informal sector working. And I know, having worked at the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare, I can guarantee you that people in the informal sector, including shoe shine boys, they are decently working and living well. Some of them have built houses. I can show you some of them who have built houses right in Kwewu. They live in Tema. But they do that, you know, because they have on-the-job training, and they train themselves themselves, but you've completed secondary school. Maybe you can write us some one or two grammar here and there, but you do not possess any skill at all. They are some of the people who maybe are selling other things around. But the fellow who is a shoe shine boy, who is a organizer, and who hasn't been to any technical school, have the capacity to equip himself, retrain himself on a job, and is doing a decent job. So the long and short of it is that if we want to make this particular document work for this nation, then our educational system, because I teach, part-time at the University of Ghana, I teach at the Pentecost University. All I want to say is that we need to restructure our teaching methodology so that when we are lecturing people, we should know that they must go back to the place of work and be able to perform to the satisfaction of the employer. Of course, I enjoy as an employer as well. I enjoy every employer to also make it a point to assist through training and development of skills on a job. So it's not going to be the burden of government alone, because government do not have the capacity to train anybody.
Let me acknowledge Joseph Kingsley. I'm the Director of Industrial Relations. Joseph, you're welcome.
Oh, thank you.
This is a very, happy day for Ghana, I guess, and we need to make it work, and we need to find out how we're going to make it work. And obviously, we're talking about the National Employment Policy. Now, with what faces us, is this thing just going to be in the book, or what, can we get it out of the book and make it a reality? And how do we do that?
You mean the policy?
Yeah, the policy.
Oh, well, one thing is that it's laudable because for a very long time we are hearing for this policy that will give some direction to how our employment systems in the country should be formulated and implemented. So it's something that we need to personalize it and then practicalize it so that at least it will fit into the scheme of affairs, especially as far as the nation is concerned and also employers' aspirations are concerned.
Joseph, as a state, we don't seem to have a good database of mopping up people who maybe don't work for multimedia. So, if I was pushing my truck and selling coconuts, didn't matter how many coconuts I was selling, I wasn't quite in the system. So, is this policy going to be for just a few, ones towing the line, or there's a way in which we can mop up everybody and, get them employed? Because when you say somebody is employed, who is employed, and then how do we mop up those who are not in mainstream?
Well, definitely, the economists will give you all the definitions, but generally, from what I've just read and what we discussed when we were trying to put this policy together, I think we tried to look at the informal economy because we realized that a chunk of our labor force are within this sector. And these are people who may have some skills, but it's not well developed. Get a point. So we believe that once this document captures them, we should be able to put in place some pragmatic measures to be able to develop them and try to formalize them as far as possible. And then we are happy this year. The ILO, the International Labour Organization, is coming out with a recommendation, that's an international labour instrument, that will look at the informal economy. So it's something that will also guide us to be able to implement whatever that we have been able to put here. So it's something that covers all aspects of employment. So all those, the KIAs, the wayside, those who have their own businesses, is going to cover them as far as possible.
I was just, on Joy News at 8, there was a little clip there, and Premium Aluex was saying that, look, beginning of the year, I had 65 workers, I'm down to 8. And here we are on the same day, ironically, with a beautiful policy. So, what does Aluex do? Go back and hire the other 50, or what then happens?
The challenge that we have is that it seems as a nation, we have not developed our labor market information seriously. And even though an aspect of the Labor Act requires that the Labor Department, and for that the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare, should be able to collect and put these figures together that will inform policymakers and also stakeholders within the employment framework. It's something something that we have not been able to develop, and that is worrying us seriously. So we believe that this policy will go a long way to be able to identify some kind of measures and then some kind of tools that will help us to be able to develop that. And then secondly, one of the major challenge that we have is the economy, the macroeconomic environment. Because we believe that if this policy should work, we need to have a very robust macroeconomic environment that will help us to be able to roll it out. Currently, from what you are just asking, we realize that this energy situation, for instance, that is what is actually killing our business, definitely. So you realize that you may want to go with even the current workforce that we have, but this energy issue will not be able to help you to sustain them, and it's a critical challenge to the employer fraternity and businesses in this country.
I mean, it's a good job you say that, because you see some of the stats in this book with regard to employment date back as far as 2010. And I mean, if you're looking at employment and you're doing a policy for employment, one would have expected a much more current data as to what's happening now, rather than a projection that happened 5 years ago.
Oh, I think there was a baseline. There's something we have, but it's not very deep enough. But we feel the little that we have should be able to help us to plan into the future as far as possible.
I mean, if still on the line, I'll come into the studio. I have Mr. Austin Game in the studio, so I'll come to the studio. I mean, as of today, what's our unemployment level?
Well, it varies. It varies, and it gives us up to 2013 information. Clearly, people with no education, we have 3.5%. People below middle school living certificate. This was provided by Dr. Bamwashi today.
Okay.
4.5. People with BCE, 4.7. People with secondary school, 11.7, very high. Vocational training, 6.1. Diploma, HND, 9.1.
These are in or these are out of employment?
These are people who are not working.
These are working, okay.
Bachelors, 5.9. Postgraduate, 2.7. This is up to 2013.
Okay.
It may not vary plus or minus too much as it is today. Clearly, we have a problem, but like my friend Ms. Amwa rightly said, the informal sector of our economy is where our best bet is. And having been in that ministry before, I can say with all certainty that the operators in the informal sector are not that useless as people sometimes assume it. They are working, except that we need to formalize it by way of mainstreaming it and helping them by retooling them, equipping them through skills acquisition, helping them with some through various lending systems, as it were, to enable them have access to funds, to start up well, or to continue in the form in which they are doing it. If they do that, they can add value. It's about value addition. So we do not have status quo hanging around us forever, because they are growing, and you can't be carrying this thing forever, as a kaya. But if you have a certain decent way, if you go to the United States, if you go to write in the skill, the sky will be the limit for them.
Now, let me welcome Mr. Kofi Asamoah, General Secretary of the TUC, to this very important discussion. Mr. Asamoah, you're welcome.
Thank you, but I mean, the thing is too low. Speak a bit loud.
Okay, I will raise my voice. Is it any better?
Yeah, it's okay.
Very good. Mr. Asamoah, it's a good day for Labour. There's actually a policy to direct the nation. How's the TUC reacting? Now, particularly, TUC mainly agitates for more pay for its members. I mean, will this help in terms of demanding more money, or how is it going to help you?
Oh, okay. I think today we place on record that there has been an attempt to put in place an employment policy for several, since 1996. Mm-hmm. These attempts have been done by successive governments to put in place an employment policy. Apparently, what it means is that issues of employment is quite an important thing for every country. Employment, unemployment, and all other related issues are extremely important. You might have heard about the Decent Work Agenda, which is being globally pushed by the International Labour Organization. Mm-hmm. And it has its 4 pillars as 1, employment creation, rights of workers, social protection, and social dialogue. So for us in Labour, we know that one major factor in reducing poverty is when we create enough jobs. If people are working and they are insecure jobs, definitely it will go a long way to reduce poverty. So we have been advocating all along that, yes, every government and all the partners talk about employment creation. Yet we never had anything like a policy framework. Usually a policy framework is just a guiding tool. Mm-hmm. It acknowledges that there is a need for a country to create an employment, to create employment. It also talks about the challenges generally of employment creation. And it provides a kind of what to be done, both in the long term, short term, and medium and long term, to solve employment. Now, unemployment is about the major challenge facing all countries, developing and developed, particularly from the standpoint that there are huge numbers for every country on unemployment. In Ghana and elsewhere, youth unemployment is about a major challenge. Mm-hmm. So if a government says that I want to provide jobs for the people as my manifesto, as my intention to manage the economy, and you don't have a policy framework in place, the question is that how do you do it? Because the policy will let you know that, yes, this is the level of employment challenges that we have. This is what we needed to do. These are the ways to do it. Now, if you take Ghana as a country, we are predominantly, how do we call it? What do you call it? Informal. Over 80% of our economy is informal. So we have just a small 15% or even less that is formal, where jobs are regulated in a way, and in some situations, rights of workers, occupational health and safety, and social protection and the things are provided. So it is a good sign today that over a long time, since 1996, the country has been able to put in place a policy. Now, putting in place a policy is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. Okay. But if there's a policy, the policy will just acknowledge the challenges of employment facing the country. The challenges, the policy will also acknowledge the importance of job creation to the economy. The policy will indicate what to be done mm-hmm. to be able to provide solutions to such a thing, both in the formal and the informal. So the policy framework as it's being put in place today seeks to acknowledge all those things and provide some guidance as to what should be done. If you have a policy in place, you need to still reduce it into activities, into plans, and how to finally even measure the plans periodically, annually, and also do an evaluation and other things as it were. But if a country talks about, we all talk about unemployment, but if there's no policy in place, it means we do not even have the plans as to how to tackle the problem. Now, today, for instance, what came out generally is that, yes, we have put in place an employment policy, but there should be policy coherence. For instance, if you look at all other policies that we have, take it, education policy, our health policy, our industrial policy, how does it relate to employment creation? For instance, if you say that you have an employment policy in place, yet you have over-liberalized your economy in a way that everything, including, how do we call it, the sticks that we use in removing things from our, how do you call it? They are all being sent, brought into the country. It means that you don't have a coherence in policy. How does your economic policy respond to your policy of employment? So the major challenge that we have is that it's not only putting in place an employment policy. It should also go further to develop the linkages with all other sectors of the economy. If you have poultry, you import poultry and what have you. If your industries are closing down because you cannot compete, what it means is that you are providing jobs for other countries who are producing all the things for you as against your country. So yes, it is a good sign to have an employment policy. At least it's a step to let us know that we acknowledge this is a challenge, this and this and this are what we're going to do. So we are looking forward to an effective and efficient implementation of the policy. But we see it as a step in the right direction, because now it shows that this and this and this are what we are going to do. So from the viewpoint of organized labor, we welcome such a policy.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a break here, but before I take a break, in here, page 12, I think it's 1, 2, 3, and it says, persons with disability, the National Disability Policy of the 2004, and the Persons with Disability Act 2006, Act 715. Sought to mainstream the needs of disabled into the national development process. One important aspect is the amendment of the building code, which makes it mandatory for offices and public buildings to be made accessible for persons with disability. I'm going to take a break and come back, and I said, even Parliament hasn't done that yet. So where do we go from here? I'm coming back. Well, thank you very much, and we are discussing a very, very important document, the National Employment Policy, first ever in the country, so at least now we know which way is forward. Now, we put a little comment on Facebook saying that over 12,000 Ghanaians are said to have lost their jobs since January till date, largely due to the power crisis and the current economic conditions. Government has, however, launched the first ever National Employment Policy to create jobs. Is this yet another program that will go dusty on the shelves? Will this new program restore hope and employment? And the first comment here is from Bra Kojo Usu Apia, who says, let's hope so. It's easier said than done. We have come to know our president very well. He can give sweet promises and will never be touched. But this is something that, Kojo, you and I have to do, not the president, you see. So this one, Kennedy Asari Berko says, Nana, it's job for those who will be in charge, but those who have been laid off will cry on the head of the President Mahama. What a visionless country we are in. We need to do a lot of education. Humphrey Citizen says, whatever goes down will definitely go up, and JM will fix the problem. I'm going to go to the phone and talk to Mr. Kofi Asamoah, who's obviously General Secretary for TUC. Secretary General, I beg your pardon, for TUC. Mr. Asamoah?
Yes, sir.
Just before we went the break, I was talking about Disability Act that mandates, all public buildings to have good access for people with disability. As we speak now, number one, I haven't seen it done, and I haven't seen you and your boys agitate to say, look, this is unfair. Because if you go to GBC and you see people who haven't coming down their stairs with their crutches in a very unusual manner. It's very unfair, but we haven't hit the road. Yet we have a policy. So how do we tie in to make sure people, grant these access so that people with disability can also enjoy this policy?
I recall that when the law, the disability law, was enacted, and normally when you have a law, you may have to have an implementation process. Other than LI, after the LI, you also put in place a policy framework. And if you read the disability law, and also how it affects infrastructure, buildings, and what have you, it acknowledged that over the years, buildings, all these structures were put without recourse to what the law provides. So some time frame was given for all buildings, including in state buildings, ministries, and everywhere, to make sure we make those amendments to conform to the law. But the point you raised is that enforcement of the law has always been a problem. Because, yes, so many buildings were put in the past without recognizing that. So now that you have a law in place, the demands it puts on us is to ensure that if you are putting up any public institution, you have to ensure that it is conducive to people with disability. For instance, in the TUC hall, we have to break some parts of this to make it possible in a way that disabled people, because the building we have has been so many years old. It has not been enforced in the sense that we expect institutions, because it gives itself, if you read the law, it gives some time frame within which all public institutions or public buildings or any other place that admits people with disability would have to work to conform. So you have said it all, that yes, putting a law in place, putting a policy in place is a means to amend. The direction that the policy will have to give to us is that within what number of years are we ensuring that if you have an old structure and it is not conducive to disability usage, you have to comply with it. Now the problem has been compliance. So the compliance has been the major issue in this country. For instance, as we discussed this employment policy, if the policy will be effective, we pointed out today that it really hinges on several other things, including even the Ministry of Employment and the Labor Relations itself. If you go there, they do not have the capacity to be able to do all the things that the policy really provides. So we said in the meeting that it's important that the necessary capacity is provided. And we said this in for long. If you ask my friend Austin Game, he has been once a minister there. He knows all the challenges there. Labor inspection, for instance, people who should go out to find out whether rights of workers are really respected. We don't build the appropriate institutions to support the policy. And if you did that, then you would just be putting laws, policies, and various things in place without the necessary enforcement mechanism. And if we did that, we have not done anything. So yes, admit that yes, it's also over 10 years or something when, or less, I can't be quite specific, where the disability law was passed.
Yeah.
There are several things that are really stated in the policy framework, the guidelines that really enforces this law, which has not been done yet, including some state structures.
Oh, thank you very much. Exactly. That's why thank you very much
by
on that.
Now, what the state should do is to have ensured that all these structures conform. Some I know they have done, or if new buildings are being put in place, the approval of the building structure should have to work in conformity with the law.
Thank you.
How do we ensure that all these things are doing? Otherwise, then we have just put a law in place without the mechanism for enforcement.
Thank you very much on that. Thank you very much on that. Thank you. And I hope that one day we'll get you in studio, because there's a lot to talk with regards to that. There's a lot to regard to that. But I have a different question for you, but let me divert small. Yeah. I mean, would it be right for, Mr. Samoa and his boys to hit the road and say, look, it's not fair, disabled people are not treated while we have our red bands, and maybe give you 6 months, look, do something, or we're coming back? I mean, some pressure.
Yeah, the pressure can be done in another form. We have the national tripartite system. To be honest with you, the whole world, I think Ghana is the place where we have tripartism working effectively. I have traveled up and down in these labor studies. I can guarantee you, Ghana is about the place where we have tripartism working very well.
Wow.
And the tripartism mechanism, the functions that have been given to them under Section 113 of the Labour Act, includes advising on these things, and many other things. So it's for them to engage, discuss, and come to terms as to how best these things can be, infused into the system, integrated into the system. I don't like this business of going off business and wasting time and energy sometimes, even though it works. But I think there are several other ways of doing it. Yes.
Mounting some pressure. But my question for you is, I read a couple of comments, and people think, oh, the president is lying to us, oh, the president won't do this, oh, the government won't do that. Why do we think that the national employment policy is political?
First of all, it's not political.
Yeah, I'm saying, why do we feel?
Yes.
Or, why some of the comments think, oh.
Yes. Look, let me say from what I do know, from my time, during President Rawlings' time, President Kufuor's time, President Atamil's time, and today, John's time, I don't know any of the president that will deliberately want to lie to a nation. I haven't seen any president want to do that. Not here, not elsewhere. A peculiar situation we find ourselves in, I hear some people I can consider as decent people can open their lips and attack the personality of a president. I won't do that. I won't do that in my lifetime. All I want to draw attention to is that I do not think the president would deliberately want to come and stand in front of a television and lie to Ghanaians. It is uncalled for if he is really the president of this nation. And so he is. We are faced with a situation of energy challenges, which I have been grappling with. Hopefully, I'm optimistic that hopefully, from what we are hearing all over the place and from what we are reading, it's becoming increasingly clear that it might be over in due course.
But to be fair to skeptics, too many dates have been given and non-fulfilled. Even though maybe it's not the president's fault because he's not a technical man, some technical man has passed on the information.
Exactly so.
Maybe somebody should have been reprimanded to make sure that the third, fourth time you give me a date, it should be something that you can hold on to. Because I think he's been just left out to dry.
But by now would have let go about some 20 people already.
Some
20 people would have been terminated. And they are supposed to be skillful people. I've been consulting for companies. I've helped VRA solve a major problem during Charles Roberts' time when he was chief executive. I mean, the whole place was engulfed with conflicts, serious ones. We had to spend 4 solid days at Akuse, for me to help them resolve that problem. So, and that could have resulted in us having blackout completely. Today, there are several ways of blackout being experienced, including sometimes when even we have a generation, the distribution becomes a problem. That is technical, and there is nothing any president across the world can do about it. All we need to do is to completely defer our political understanding. If it's time for election, you can use it to make your case. But for now, let's all be interested in finding out how do we resolve this problem. I am interested in this particular program. That's why I sacrificed to be here from Tema. The issue is about how do we implement this decent policy to become useful to our society. I'm not interested in whether it is CPP, whether it's PPP that is going to be in power tomorrow. That is not the issue. If they come and they inherit this document, we must help them to make it work. And I am interested in all Ghanaians, regardless of their political affiliations, seeing to it, because your son and your daughter who is unemployed needs work. It doesn't care whether it is MPP or DDC. It doesn't matter. What we need to do is to get people having decent work to do. And we must be interested in that. How the president and his team will help us get this Dunso matter resolved, and we come on stream so that we won't have these 12,000 people going off business. And there are other several factors. We want to, for instance, in today's distance, we have to modernize agriculture. How do we get our irrigation working well so that we can modernize agriculture to be the fulcrum around which we can create more jobs? That is the concern we must be driving at.
The other thing, Mr. Game, you know, and we hear that there's a disjoint between education and industry, there's academia, and there's. Yeah. But then I ask you, what industry has Ghana got?
Yeah, my minister at the time, 1996, sent me to Ministry of Education to chair a meeting, you know, an interministerial meeting and other players from education. All of them were present, and we met at the GES, you know, boardroom. And we had a conversation about how do we integrate and fuse into the educational system the training and development and skills of the people who are coming out. That's why I mentioned about in, out, out. And that has been brought to bear on a teacher training, you know, system. Yeah. They go in, out, out. That is how it ought to be. And we must also employ...
What training, what industry has Ghana got? So that if I was going to educate my son today, and look, son, go to petrochemicals because they are looking for people. Or you go to electronics because they're looking for people, or you go... What industry do we have?
Indeed, we may not have too many, but we have some. Let me give you an example. Maritime University, if they are training people who are doing maritime administration, they are knowing how to handle tugboats, etc., speedboats.
How many will they absorb? 600?
No, we may be able to get people to go to, for instance, Meridian Port Services, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, VLTC, Atakosombo, and other private companies.
I mean, how many would they absorb a year? 1,000?
At least they could absorb about 1,000.
You know, so when you have about millions of people unemployed, you know, you're looking at an industry that needs like 100,000 people, you know, in cotton farm or rubber farm.
I agree. Our population is 26 million. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Even my small company, investors attach people to my company, and we help them to be trained in negotiation skills, in conflict resolution, in mediation processes, in labor management, you know, cooperation systems. Even my small company, I get people attached to it. I still do that. And when I go to teach people at the university, I don't teach them by way of lecturing the way we traditionally do it. I try to do it because they are adults and they are coming out from school as soon as possible to be able to perform on the job. We don't need employers to spend too much money training people on a job. So we must revolutionize our educational system, to be honest with you. We haven't gotten there at all.
I mean, you see, when this policy was coming out, I was hoping that we'll say, look, we are going heavy into, let's say, cotton and rubber for the next 10 years. So anyone who wants to make money or make a living, start learning about cotton and rubber. And then, you know, we just absorb people there. And like cocoa, you know that once your cotton is grown, it's bought, or once your rubber is grown, it's bought. But if we haven't done that, we seem to have a good policy in a vacuum.
It's embedded in the heart of it. It's talking about modernizing, for instance, agriculture. If we are going to modernize agriculture, then we need to take a look at our land tenure system. We need to take a look at our irrigation system. We need to look at, we don't have to be waiting for rain-fed agriculture system. Because generally we are an agrarian country. We need to talk about our cooperative system so that the students who are doing agric need not go to ADB to go and work alone. You must find a way of, before you even get to the end of the tunnel, 3, 4, 5, 6 people have put together a decent, you know, working business plan. They have costed it, and like this YEP, you know, yes, all these structures have been put together. We must take advantage of them. And that's why I said we must eschew politics from our thinking and see how we can approach these things. When it's time for election, they'll give me paper, I'll go and vote. You know, but when it comes to looking for employment, it does not know political colors. It shouldn't know it. I have people working with me, I don't know what political persuasion they belong to. You know, that's just about it.
I just hope that we won't see or treat this document with any political colorization, but just look at it on a red, gold, green basis, so we all work, because clearly everything.
But if you had asked me any question that is political, you'll see me that I'll take my chair and start walking away from you. Because I cannot stand that thing that is going on in this country. It's making me very angry. I'm talking about genuine anger. Not the traditional anger, everybody just go beating about the bush.
All the problems in here are, are Ghanaian problems and not political problems.
Yes.
The fact that disabled don't have access didn't start today or yesterday.
At all.
It's all been with
even
us.
In churches, the question you ask, even in churches, including the church I pastor, I can tell you it is not fair when someone who is a disabled coming to your church, you have to be struggling. It's not fair. Even though some churches are now beautifully built in such a way that you have to climb something and descend. You know, so how do we do it? So it's not about this. This is a general thing, because church is virtually commercial now.
Yes. Let me get a couple of Facebook comments before we go. I got one here from Desmond Prince. Ferries, the people lost their job due to power crisis, and we are yet to resolve it, but we are still talking about creating new jobs. Seriously, this government is taking us for granted with this fake promises. This one is Komodo Sayos, who thinks that, listen, things are going to be definitely better. And Rukaya Abukakari says, no matter the situation, the launch is in the right direction. Those who lost their job due to the power crisis will be at advantage for another job because of their experience, as well as people who have never gotten employment at all. The power crisis, and it reads on. Thank you very much for posting your comment. I know there's more, but somehow my thing has stopped refreshing, so I can't read more of the message. But thanks a lot for joining us on Facebook. But I think we need a lot of education.
So let me tell you something. Yes. When people are losing their jobs, as it's being described, they are paid redundancy pay. It may not be enough, but they are paid redundancy pay. And people, I have suffered redundancy before, and I didn't waste my time in regrouping myself. People ought to take this as a challenge. I have negotiated redundancy pay for people in this country in very recent times in front of me. And the money they get, we expect them to put it to use. And people have been declared redundant, and I've heard people rang their general secretaries and thank them for giving them help. And they are now establishing themselves and are doing something better. And this creates opportunity for them to regroup themselves. They shouldn't lose hope. With time, if they still, because they possess skills, some of them are highly skilled, at least the Ghanaian stature, they should be able to regroup themselves.
No matter how bad things are, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, this document is extensive, and there isn't much time. It looks at the labor administration, the labor market information, persons living with HIV, unemployment, youth unemployment, graduate unemployment, looks at gender issues. Everything is covered in this document, and so far as we don't cover it and we treat it with this color, we'll be fine. But those who follow, that's my opinion on Joy FM. Tomorrow we're looking at the curse of the P word, and the P word being politics. Why have we demonized it so much? And tomorrow we're going to try and find out if we know why. But tomorrow I'm talking about the curse of the P word. Don't miss it on Joy FM. But Mr. Onstingame, it's been wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for coming.
I appreciate it.
Tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Thank you for watching.